So today we have the time lapse for our GMC Yukon. If you're just tuning in and you want to see the series, the link is up above. It gives a little more detail and the full rebuild. This is just the 18 hours I spent swapping over the frames and tearing two trucks apart and putting two trucks back together. It includes a little more footage than the series did and gives you an overview so that you can kind of see where parts went in case you were struggling with what parts I used off what vehicles. It also answers a lot of people's questions of how much time do I spend filming all of the series. You get to see me moving the camera around. I didn't edit any of that out, left it in there. So let's get started. I'll pull the headlight out, pull the other headlight out, pull the closeout panel and bumper bracket off. Pull the hood latch out. Now the afternoon crew is here. So we're going to take the hood off. We're going to disconnect the drive shaft, both drive shafts. Shifter cable, emergency brake cable. Take the running boards off. I'll disconnect everything under the hood on the passenger side. Air box, overflow bottle, battery, AC lines. Now we'll do all the trans lines and radiator hoses. Heater hoses. Some oil cooler lines. Power steering lines. The AC lines on the front. Now we can pull the fender off. I'll take everything apart on the driver's side. This is the electrical junction box and fuse box. Unplug everything. Take the brake master cylinder off. There's a ground strap in there. Disconnect the ECM. Now we can unbolt the radiator support. Get it out of our way. Disconnect the power steering hoses. Disconnect the steering shaft. Now we're going to unbolt the body bolts. Reposition the truck so we can lift the body off. I'll unbolt the exhaust, the engine mounts. Disconnect the fuel lines. Now we're ready to lift the engine out. Set the engine on our pallet so we can roll it out of the way. Now we can take the fuel tank out. Take the exhaust out. Muffler and tailpipe anyway. Drop a little bit of the suspension to get it out of there. Now we'll set the body back down so we're ready for the frame next weekend. Put all of our loose parts back in the truck. Now we can pull our truck apart. Take the front bumper off. Take the rear bumper off. Take the filler neck out. That's the black body behind it. Disconnect our drive shafts and shift cable. Disconnect our trans mount. The emergency brake cable. Take our running boards off. Disconnect the e-brake cable. Now we can unbolt the body. Reposition the truck so we can lift up the body. Disconnect everything under the hood. Electrical box. Master cylinder. ECM. Take our battery out. Air box. Overflow. Disconnect all our radiator hoses. Trans lines. Power steering lines. And oil cooler lines. Disconnect our heater hoses, AC lines. Disconnect the steering shaft. We got some ground wires up in the front there. Pull our body bolts out for the radiator support. Now we can lift the body off. Just enough to get our frame out from underneath it. And there's our two frames. We have the original one on the right and the parts truck frame on the left. The only thing we're using off the parts truck is the frame itself. So we're going to pull off the fuel tank right now. Disconnect the brake lines and the wiring harness. We'll take it all off together. They share the same clips. It's easier just to leave them all together. Unbolt the ABS unit. Disconnect the brake lines that go around the front of the engine. I'll take them all out of the way. Set them off to the side. I'll disconnect the engine. Pull all the motor mount bolts. Lift it out of our way. Engine, transmission, transfer case, leave it all together. We're measuring everything just to see how bad it really was. Now we're going to go over our parts frame and strip it all down. Pull off our fuel and brake lines and wiring harness. Set them off to the side. Now the fun part, changing the suspension. Pull our tires off. We'll start stripping the parts frame first. Take off the control arms, drive axles, knuckles, hubs, everything. And when that's all out of the way, we can drop the diff. There's the owner of the cigarettes. So quit giving me a hard time, I don't smoke. I'll take the front diff out. Then we go over to the original frame. We'll be able to take everything right off of it and put it right on the other frame. Put the front diff back in the other frame. And we start putting all our suspension back on it. So this is the first vehicle in over 1,000 that I've rebuilt that I actually talked to the original owner, or the owner at the time of the accident. And the transmission was in fact installed by a GM dealer. So all those loose brackets and extra bolts, that's your dealer techs for you. We got all our suspension on. We can throw the tires back on it. Put it back down on the ground. And we can switch our rear ends over. Put it on the go jacks so we can slide the rear end out once it's loose. Just unbolt everything. All the control arms, shocks. And then jack up the frame. I'll do the same thing on the original frame. Take the spare tire down. Take the exhaust out while the rear end's out of the way. Now we're going to put the rear end back in the other frame, just so that when the black truck is all together, I can roll it around. Makes it easier to move around in my storage yard. Now we'll put our original rear end in our good frame. Change our tow hooks up in the front. Gotta put that shiny chrome on there. Now we're going to throw the suspension back on our damaged frame. Again, just so that it's easier for me to roll around. Throw our tires back on. Now we're going to take some measurements before we cut our cross member off, so we're able to put it back in the right place on the other frame. So I'll grind off the cross member while she cleans up the wax on the new frame. So now we got our cross member off that frame. So clean it all up. And I'll get the one off the other frame. We're grinding the edges down, getting it ready to weld in. I'm going to fit it in there so that we know where we need to clean to weld our new one in. It's about where it goes. So we'll mark it, knock it back out of there, clean up all the wax, grind it all down so we can get a nice weld. Then we can put it back in for the last time. Measure it all, make sure it's in the right spot. Start welding it in. Now we're going to put our old brake lines back on our frame. Just because up here in the north, I might end up using those eventually when they start rusting out. so it doesn't hurt to save them. Now we'll put our drivetrain back in our new frame. Doesn't quite fit, so we'll slide it back on the forklift. Drop it in, bolt it down. Now we'll put our fuel, brake lines, and wiring harness in. Hook them all up. Bolt in our ABS unit. Put our gas tank in. I'll push our frame out of the way. Put our other one in position to go back underneath the truck. So now you just set the truck down on top of it. Put the bolts back in our radiator support. Hook up our steering shaft. Master brake cylinder. Hook up our AC lines. Hook up all of our electrical box. Ground strap. All that good stuff. We hook up our ground wires. And our trans cooler. Hook up all of our radiator hoses, oil cooler lines, power steering lines. Hook up the filler neck. Now we hook up our drive shaft, our shift cables. Of course, the shift cable found its way into the wrong spot, so we had to lift the body up a little bit to get it out of where it did not belong. Bolt in our body bolts. Bolt in trans mount. Bolt up the lines to the rack and pinion. Now we can bleed the brakes the old-fashioned way. Fill up the fluid, bleed the fronts. So now that we're all done with that, we can change our fender over. So we'll pull the hood off. Unbolt our fender. Now we can put the old battery tray in there and use it to pull out the cowl. I'm going to change the upper bracket for the fender. It was a little bent, so I just took the one off the parts truck. Swapped it over. Could have straightened it, but had a perfectly good one. Why not use it? We'll put all of our clips on our fender, and then put the fender back on. Try and line it up and cuss out the GM engineers that made that stupid bracket. You gotta take the fender back off to adjust it. So we'll do that a couple times till we get it right. So we got it right. And put our hood back on. Line up our front end. Change our upper bumper support. Put the headlight in there just to check our gaps. Move the hood around until it fits. And take the headlight out. Now we can put our air box and battery back in it so we can drive it around. Put the overflow in. Fill up the antifreeze, charge the AC. So the Yukon has since moved on to its new home a few days ago. I put about 300 miles on it. Had no issues whatsoever. Kind of liked it despite the fact that it's red and I'm not a fan of red cars. Maybe I'll have to buy another one so I can drive it around for a little bit. So like the video if you found it interesting. Share it if you think somebody else might. Subscribe if you want to see what builds I have coming up next. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.